Yeah, it's a great question. I think where I like to start with a lot of folks is the discussion about reality. And I think most people believe they're living in reality, but they're not. So what do I mean by that? Right? I believe most people are living in what I call the mental overlay about reality. Right? The world itself is still here. So traditional reality, potentially, trees, the wind, animals, our bodies, right? Gravity, right? But attention is rarely with any of that. With most people, it's always somewhere else, either in thought, in memory, in planning, in identity, in the story. And again, I don't mean any of that as a criticism. It's not a personal failure. It's because the nervous system, it learned how to survive by creating representations of reality and then slowly forgot the difference between the representation and the thing itself. Does that make sense? So we don't experience life directly. We experience our model of life. Hence, we're living in the overlay of reality. Some simple examples. Hopefully, these will be good ones. Money only works because we agree it means something. Time only exists as a way we measure change. Our reputations, which is always a funny thing to me, but reputations only exist in other people's minds, right? They're symbols, useful ones in some cases, but symbols nonetheless. And so over time, what I see is people's attention migrates into the symbolic world so completely that it starts to feel like that's where life is actually happening. And that's the overlay. So the problem is that we've created this overlay. The problem is that we've moved into it. And again, you can see this everywhere. Just the other day, I was out walking with my dogs and and you can see folks, right? Someone could walk past a tree that's been alive longer than any story that they believe about themselves, and they don't notice it. Someone could watch a sunset that required billions of years of physics to happen exactly the way that it happened, barely registers. Not because they don't care, because attention is occupied elsewhere. Replaying a conversation, managing an identity, solving a future that doesn't even exist yet. But under the overlay, reality is still here. We're just busy living somewhere else. Okay. And after a while, it's just interesting to witness how normal this feels. The overlay feels real because it's familiar, right? Thoughts feel real because it's constant. Identity feels real because it's been rehearsed. So that all feels real. So when people talk about waking up, or becoming more conscious, they often assume it means gaining something. And it actually doesn't, not in my opinion. It means noticing where attention has been living. And this isn't about rejecting thought, right? Thought is a tool, identity is a tool, money is a tool, but they were never meant to replace reality. They're tools to help us navigate it. Okay. But the nervous system learned that staying in the overlay feels safer than being here because reality is unpredictable. And again, we've talked before on one of the other questions that you asked me that the nervous system likes familiarity, not unpredictability. So, thought is controllable, the future is imaginary, the present isn't. So attention learned to live ahead of itself, so to speak. And, for a while that works until it doesn't, because when attention lives primarily in the overlay, life starts feeling thin to some folks and at the beginning, right? Not painful, not broken, just distant. And some people will describe it as a numbness or a restlessness or a quiet sense that something is missing. What's missing is contact, okay? Contact with the body, contact with the environment, contact with this moment as it actually is. This moment, just how it is, not as it's interpreted. And here's something that folks that are listening, maybe they'll find valuable. It's a simple basic tool. Okay. Not a practice, not a technique, just a way of reorienting that I invite folks listening to consider. Right now, wherever you are, see if you can notice three things without naming them, right? Not a chair or a wall or a sound, just color, just vibration, just pressure. No analysis, no commentary. You don't need to stop thinking. You're just letting thoughts stop being the room you're standing in, right? If you think about it, everything in your room, we gave it meaning. Like if an alien teleported into my space right now and looked at a lamp, it doesn't know that it's a lamp. We named it lamp. We gave it meaning, right? We designated that. So when you just allow reality to be, something happens, something very subtle. You realize that thought is happening inside of awareness, not the other way around. So the overlay floats on top of something far more stable than any story you tell yourself about yourself. Okay. And the point isn't to stay here forever. You're going to end up going back into planning. You'll go back into identity. You'll go back into thought. And that's not a failure. But I think the shift happens when you realize you can come back out, when the overlay stops being the only place you live, when a tree is just a tree again, when a breath is just a breath, when a moment doesn't need to be anything or to mean anything. You don't become less functional. You become more grounded. And what I found in my life, more available, more responsive versus reactive. And it's because you're living from reality, not just thinking about it. So if life has felt distant, if it feels muted, if meaning feels abstract, okay, it might not be because something is wrong. It might simply be the attention moved into the overlay and forgot how to return. Reality hasn't gone anywhere. It's still here, waiting, not for you to improve, for you to awaken, and not for you to figure anything out, just for you to notice, even for a moment. I know that was a long answer, but I hope it got to the question.